Have you ever tried riding your bike over nails? I guess it wasn't your intention, but if it happened at least once, you don't want to live through that experience again. Now imagine you'd have to ride your bike on Mars. Its surface is covered with rocks, canyons, volcanoes, dry lake beds, craters, and red dust. That combo makes those nails look totally harmless. No wheels we use down on Earth will do the trick. So NASA has been working on developing the perfect ones for use on the Moon or Mars since the 1960s. They tried smooth rubber tires with inner tubes full of nitrogen, large flexible wire mesh wheels, and airless compliant tires made of several hundred coiled steel wires. The spring tire. But nothing was good enough for the challenging cosmic terrains. The wheels of Mars Curiosity rover only lasted a bit over a year before they got seriously damaged. The rover's tires faced two big problems. First, they had to be strong enough to carry the enormous weight of the vehicle. Engineers tried to make it the most efficient vehicle for exploration, different from previous models that worked on the Moon and on Mars before it. That's how it ended up being so heavy. A big, heavy car needs durable tires, you know. And of course, the surface of Mars is no walk in the park. The engineers tried to make tires out of aluminum, which is a lightweight and strong material, but the wheels got shredded soon. The damage didn't prevent Curiosity from doing its job, but it did affect how efficient it was. And that's where the new, reinvented wheel rolled in. NASA decided to replace aluminum with a material called shape memory alloy. It's made of a unique type of metal called Nitinol, a blend of nickel and titanium. Unlike other materials that bend out of shape under pressure or heat, this cool substance reverts back to its original shape on its own in the same circumstances. Nitinol is the hero up on Mars, but it's also useful down on Earth. Just imagine your tires never getting punctured again. Sounds good to me. One company decided to use this tech on their bikes. The tires are tube-shaped and squash down when you roll over a bump. They will develop perfect shape memory over time. They're supposed to work best on gravel, trail, and mountain bikes. The metal surface is covered with a rubbery outer layer. When it wears off eventually, the company plans to retread the tires to make them last for years. The previous airless tire models were made of patented foam that was supposed to last for up to 5,000 miles. They didn't take off because they made the bike too heavy. The new model is supposed to solve that problem. Nitinol also works great in the field of heart surgery. Tubes made of it can expand to the desired width under certain temperatures in the human body. The tire isn't the only object that works better with shape memory. If you can't imagine your sleep without that comfy memory foam mattress, you can send a thank you note to NASA for it. Its history goes back to 1966, when they decided to customize seats for astronauts to somehow ease the effects of G-force on takeoff and landing. Creating a custom seat for every flight seemed way too impractical, so memory foam saved the day. It easily adjusted to astronauts' body shape and went back into a rest state when not in use. In the 1980s, it went from space down to the earthly public. Now it's in mattresses, pillows, amusement park rides, horseback saddles, and football helmet liners. The third-generation memory foam has gel particles and viscofoam inside. That's the secret to its superpower of reducing trapped body heat, springing back up in no time, and making the mattress feel soft as a cloud. The name says it all, but in case you ever had your doubts, space blankets were indeed invented by NASA with space in mind. Back in the 1960s, they were preparing for the space era and looking for a thin, reflective metallic material that would protect their spaceships from solar radiation. And they managed to design just the perfect material MPET, strong enough to be used as insulation to protect expensive space electronics from temperature swings. Ever since, it has been an important part of nearly every mission to and beyond the orbit of our planet. It's also used in spacesuits to protect astronauts from radiation and the sun's heat once they venture into open space. Down on Earth, space blankets are the best friends of marathon runners. Since body temperature drops after they stop running, they need something to help bring it back to normal. And the magical space blanket material can also protect your phone from extreme heat and cold when used as an insulation layer in a phone case. In the early 1960s, headsets for airline pilots used to be really bulky. They often had to use handheld mics to communicate. NASA needed a more reliable and lightweight technology for their missions to make sure the communication would go without any problems. In 1961, the Liberty Bell 7 capsule splashed down, and astronaut Gus Grissom nearly sank without radio transmission or contact with his recovery team. NASA reached out to a manufacturing company to design a headset that could be planted into an astronaut's helmet. Just 11 days later, the team came up with a microphone headset unit that could be used by astronauts to communicate with one another and with Earth. It even had a noise-canceling feature. The headset was later improved and used for Mercury and Apollo missions. The world was able to hear Neil Armstrong's most famous phrase as he landed on the moon thanks to that wireless headset. Freeze-drying tech for food was not created but greatly improved by NASA to pack more snacks on long Apollo missions. During the first human missions, astronauts had to eat bite-sized cubes, freeze-dried powders, and squeeze semi-liquids out of aluminum tubes. Doesn't sound like a festive meal, right? The astronauts weren't happy about this diet, so NASA had to think of a better solution for the Gemini missions. They funded research that ended in developing special gravies that could go into edible shape in hot water in just 5 minutes. The idea of freeze-drying is to cook food, then freeze it under low pressure, and then slowly heat it in a vacuum chamber to remove ice crystals. Thanks to this tech, food maintains 98% of its nutritional value, with only 20% of its original weight. NASA kept improving the tech in the following decades. Now, freeze-dried food is a great help for backpackers, disaster relief programs, and anyone who needs to pack light and still get proper nutrition. The infrared thermometer that lets us check temperature from a distance was developed with the support of NASA as well. It measures thermal radiation emitted by your eardrum, a lot like they measure the temperature of stars and planets. Each device has a lens that focuses light from the object onto a special detector that converts radiation into an electrical signal and then into temperature that you can see on a display. It's used for many purposes, from monitoring hotspot temperatures in mechanical and electrical systems to checking the temperature of visitors in public places. I bet you didn't see this one coming. The technology behind selfies comes from that designed for interplanetary missions cameras. In the 1990s, one of NASA Labs, Jet Propulsion Laboratory, introduced a light mini imaging system that didn't need a lot of energy to take high-quality photos from space. This tech is used in cell phone and computer cameras, and if we go back to the 1960s, we'll find some good evidence that the whole idea of selfies could belong to astronauts. Edwin Buzz Aldrin, the second man to walk on the moon, took some selfies up there with a specially designed Hasselblad camera. He even used the spacecraft as a tripod to stabilize the image and get his face in it. Remember this if you ever end up in space with no one to take photos of you.
The moon might be hiding trillions of dollars worth of materials beneath that dusty surface, and NASA is about to get a piece of it soon. Their new lunar drilling tech just passed its first big test, and it could open up an entirely new frontier: space mining. This isn't just a scientific milestone. This could change the US economy forever, and maybe even reshape life on Earth. That's because they found something rare in lunar soil. Something that could become essential for us in the future: helium-3. Okay, so you know helium, right? It's the gas that makes birthday balloons float. Helium-3 is not that. It's a special isotope of helium, which basically means it has the same number of protons, 2 by the way, but a different number of neutrons. That's chemistry speak for it's rare, like super rare. Here comes the sad part. Earth had helium-3 once, a lot of it actually. But during our planet's formation, a lot of it escaped into space. Turns out, it's super light, so it didn't stick around. But we can still find it here and there, mostly inside our planet. I mean, there's some of it literally trapped underground. Or even a lot, as some recent studies might suggest. But still, the problem is that extracting helium-3 is expensive, limited, and seriously difficult. So difficult, in fact, that getting it from the moon suddenly sounds like a piece of cake. To really understand why extracting helium-3 in space might be easier, we need to quickly compare Earth and the moon. So here's the sun, right? This huge ball of fire in the sky constantly shoots out tons of helium-3. When this helium-3 reaches Earth, our planet's magnetic field acts like a giant invisible shield, basically saying, "Nope, not here," and it deflects most of it away. But the Moon doesn't have a friendly protective magnetic field like Earth does. So when helium-3 reaches the Moon, it hits the surface directly and gets trapped in the lunar regolith. I'm talking about that loose layer of dust, soil, and rocky debris covering the Moon. And there might be tons of it, literally. Some estimates put it somewhere between 1 and 3 million tons of helium-3. The best part is that almost all of it is probably sitting right in the top layer of lunar soil. So instead of heavy-duty drilling, it could be as easy as just scooping up some moon dust. That's why a lot of people think getting helium-3 from our natural satellite could actually be way easier, or maybe even cheaper, than digging deep underground here on Earth. Now, you're probably thinking, why go through all that trouble? I mean, if it doesn't work for birthday balloons, what's the big deal with helium-3? Well, for starters, it's already being used in advanced medical tech, like magnetic resonance imaging and X-ray. But here's the real game changer. Helium-3 could actually end our dependence on fossil fuels for good. This rare isotope could be used for advanced nuclear fusion reactors here on Earth. In other words, it could give us nuclear energy that's not just super efficient, but a whole lot safer too. See, most nuclear power plants today run on a process called fission. They use uranium-235, and when those atoms split, you get a ton of energy. But you also get something else: radioactive waste. And yeah, it's just as dangerous as it sounds. But helium-3 is different. It could power future reactors with a process called fusion. If you mix helium-3 with a type of hydrogen called deuterium, you get a lot of energy, but without the dangerous waste. It could be cost-efficient too. Let's say a single space shuttle cargo bay could carry about 25 tons of helium-3. That would be enough to power the entire United States for a year. And scientists believe there's enough helium-3 on the Moon to power the whole world for 10,000 years. These are only estimates for now, but the future potential is so exciting that the demand for helium-3 is already skyrocketing, and so is its value. In 2024, some experts say that the helium-3 market was worth about $670 million. This year, it's expected to hit around $730 million, and 10 years from now, experts believe it could reach nearly $1.6 billion. Sorry for all the numbers, I just wanted to show you why mining the Moon matters. It might actually save us from a future energy crisis by giving us almost endless, clean nuclear power. Everything sounds great so far, but there's one big challenge. Mining helium-3 on the Moon is one thing. Bringing it back to Earth is a whole different story. So let's look at one possible solution. First, robots or specialized machines would drill into the lunar soil, or simply scoop up moon dust, to collect the helium-3. Then it gets packed into containers and launched off the Moon, heading for Earth. When the containers get close to Earth, a ship called the Space Rapid Transit will pick them up in orbit. Think of it as a reusable space truck with engines that can even use air for thrust. Finally, the ship would land at an airport here on Earth. From there, the helium-3 would head straight to power plants, giving us clean, safe, and almost unlimited energy. See how challenging it sounds, right? Of course, specialists are still figuring out the best way to transport helium-3. But one thing is certain, we're getting closer and closer to building a full mining base on the Moon. NASA recently tested a new drill technology called Trident. And as soon as it touched the lunar surface, it started working right away and performed perfectly. For now, its main purpose is to bring soil to the surface so scientists can study it. They want to learn more about how strong the lunar regolith is and how it reacts when drilled. That's definitely an exciting step towards extraterrestrial mining. Because it's not just helium-3, you know. There are a lot of other valuable things that can be taken from the Moon. For example, there's water ice on the Moon, and from that, we could extract oxygen and hydrogen. Then there could be rare and expensive metals like platinum, rhodium, and iridium. We could even mine iron, silicon, and aluminum. which would be perfect for building things directly in orbit, like future space stations or other infrastructure. Now that we know how important mining the moon could be, you're probably wondering, is any of this even allowed? I mean, who actually owns the moon? The short answer? Nobody. Even though NASA is up there doing research, that doesn't mean the United States owns the moon. Back in 1967, some nations signed the Outer Space Treaty. It basically says no one can claim ownership over our natural satellite or any other celestial body. Not an asteroid, not a planet, not even a random rock floating out there. So, if a country wants to explore the moon, sure, they can do it, but they can't plant a flag and say, "This is ours now." Here's where it gets messy. Companies. There isn't much of an agreement about what private businesses can and can't do out there. For example, a private company sets up a moon base. They land a successful spacecraft, build a small station, and even start digging. The base itself belongs to them, sure, but the land they're sitting on does not. Everyone is on the same page up to that point. The tricky part is, the treaty doesn't really spell out what happens to the materials they dig up. Nobody is totally sure if those resources would even belong to them. And if the materials are not technically the company's, can they even sell them? It's hard to say. So yeah, sorry. Even if you had the cash to build your own lunar base, you probably can't just scoop up helium-3 and bring it back as a souvenir. I mean, unless you want to risk becoming the first person ever banned from the moon. Hey, you know what would be pretty cool? Having a tiny helicopter on Mars that can buzz around and scan the environment from above. Taking pictures and looking for hidden extraterrestrial life on its own. At some point, somebody at NASA said something like this behind closed doors. Then they went and actually did it. Say hello to Ginny, one of the most significant scientific achievements since we first started exploring space. Back in 2020, NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory, or JPL, packed a tiny side project onto the Mars mission. It was called Ingenuity, a flying experiment meant to test if powered flight was even possible on another planet. Just proof of concept, a test demo. The real mission was to explore the surface of Mars with the rover called Perseverance. In 2021, this six-wheeled robotic scientist about the size of a small SUV landed on Mars in a place called Jezero Crater. Scientists believe there was once a lake here about 3.5 billion years ago. That's important because where there's ancient water, there might have been ancient extraterrestrial life. Perseverance is basically a science lab on wheels. It can study rocks, drill into the surface, and stash samples in little sealed tubes for later. These samples are part of a long-term plan. NASA and ESA plan to bring them back to Earth in 2033 for more study. This could finally answer, has life ever existed outside Earth? Maybe samples won't give the definitive answer, but it's our best shot. Suddenly 2033 seems very far away. The rover has other instruments and testing tools that could greatly benefit future exploration of Mars. But the hero of this story is Ginny. They got the idea for this little chopper from drones here on Earth and thought it could fly around and scout for Perseverance. However, actually making it work on Mars sounds almost impossible. The first problem was the atmosphere. Mars has approximately only 1% of Earth's air pressure, which means there's barely anything to push against. On Earth, chopper blades bite into thick air to generate lift. Since there's basically no air on Mars, it's sort of like trying to swim in fog instead of water. Then there's gravity. Sure, it's only about 38% of Earth's, which helps a bit, but not nearly enough to offset the lack of air. To fly at all, the device would have to be feather light, with huge blades spinning like crazy, just to grab onto the thin air. Oh, and there's also the cold. At night, temperatures plunge to negative 130 degrees Fahrenheit, which is approximately the same as the coldest night ever recorded in Antarctica. That's enough to damage most electronics, and batteries hate the cold. So Ginny charged up during the day with a tiny solar panel, then use that power to keep warm through the freezing Martian night. Every day, scientists had to hope that their drone worth $80 million wouldn't land under a hill in a shadow, especially since it couldn't be controlled manually. Mars is so far away that signals can take up to 20 minutes to get there. Imagine playing a video game where your character has that kind of delay after you press a button. Ginny had to be fully autonomous. All these technological technicalities, and yet Ginny did not simply fly. What was first planned as a 30-day test trial with 5 flights ended up being a full-fledged support mission that lasted 3 years. So, how did engineers pull it off? First, they had to make Ginny as light as physically possible, only 4 pounds. That's lighter than my house cat, but somehow it still carried 2 cameras, a battery, a flight computer, a radio antenna, and even a heater. Everything had to be trimmed down or miniaturized. Then came the blades, Ginny's most important feature. On Earth, a small helicopter spins its blades between 400 and 500 RPM. But we explained why that wouldn't work on Mars. So, Ginny's 2 rotor blades had to spin 5 times faster, about 2,500 revolutions per minute. Each blade was about 2 feet long, made from carbon fiber. Light as a feather, but tough as nails. And instead of sitting side by side like on a drone, those blades were stacked on top of each other, spinning in opposite directions. That cancels out the twisting force you'd normally get from a single spinning blade. You know how helicopters have that tiny tail rotor in the back? They need that because when their main rotor on top spins to lift the chopper up, it also creates a twisting force called torque. That makes the entire vehicle want to spin in the opposite direction. Without some way to fight that, you'd end up doing donuts in the sky. However, Ginny couldn't have a tail rotor because it would add too much weight, take more power, and make things even more complicated. So, engineers created a workaround with 2 large blades stacked on top of each other, spinning in opposite directions, which prevented the drone from spinning out of control. As for controlling it, Ginny didn't have a full-blown AI, but it wasn't remote-controlled either. NASA uploaded flight plans from Earth, but once the drone took off, it flew itself using onboard sensors and code. Basically, like a really smart autopilot. To stay on course, it watched the ground with a downward-facing camera, kind of like tracking its own shadow as a guide. And finally, the result was seen in April 2021, when Ginny lifted off the Martian ground and hovered in place for just 39 seconds. It rose about 10 feet into the air, hovered a bit, spun around a little, and landed safely back on the red dirt. It was short and simple. One small step for a drone, but a huge one for humanity. For the next 3 years, the team responsible was testing the limits, flying Ginny further and further. From above, Ginny saw more than the rover could. The drone helped map the terrain, spotted risks like loose sand and sharp rocks, and even found shortcuts for perseverance. It even saved the rover, so to speak, when its photos helped the team reroute the vehicle around a tricky dune. Ginny also made snapshots of interesting layered rocks, exactly the kind you'd need when you're searching for ancient life. Basically, once the drone spotted something weird or promising from above, Perseverance would roll over to check it out. And it worked way better than anyone expected. However, in January 2024, Ginny went missing. The drone was supposed to do a short hop, go up, hover, land, easy stuff. But after takeoff, NASA lost contact. For a while, no one knew what had happened, just silence. A few days later, NASA finally got a weak signal and pulled the flight data. Turns out, Ginny flew over a featureless terrain. See, it used its downward-facing camera to track movement, kind of like an optical mouse. No texture below meant nothing to lock onto. Mid-flight, the drone got disoriented, tilted, and during landing, one of its blades clipped the ground. NASA confirmed it. The rotor was damaged. It will never fly again. However, this is not a sad story. Even with broken wings, the robot is still useful. After Flight 72, NASA gave Ginny new software and a new job, staying powered on and quietly collecting daily data, possibly for the next 20 years. In a way, Ginny has gone from scout to ground-based observer. So, what happens next? Well, we wait for 2030 while we make more flying robots. The biggest one on the horizon is Dragonfly, a car-sized rotorcraft scheduled to launch in 2028 and land on Titan, one of Saturn's moons. Titan has a thick atmosphere and low gravity, a dream environment for a flying drone. Dragonfly will hop from one location to another, searching for life in that icy landscape. It's like Ginny's big cousin, but with nuclear power and a whole moon to explore. The Project Ingenuity's success is already inspiring NASA to design better Martian helicopters. Some of them could be equipped with grippers to pick up rock samples, or even join up with rovers for full-on search and collect operations. Thanks to Ginny, what started as a tech demo could one day evolve into a fleet of flying robots crisscrossing the red planet. In 2023, an ex-NASA engineer claimed he built a machine that can lift itself against gravity without using any fuel. No rockets, no fire, no exhaust, just electricity. If true, it would break the most sacred laws in physics and rewrite everything we know about space travel. So, is this just another hoax or a door to the future? The engineer's name is Charles Bueller. He used to work for NASA, making sure rockets don't blow up randomly. He was a part of the Space Shuttle, Hubble, ISS, and other huge projects. Now, Bueller and his team work at a private company called Exodus Propulsion Technologies, trying to build a long-term dream of space engineers, a spacecraft that doesn't need fuel. It's the kind of thing that would instantly change everything about space travel. Just think of the future where you could go to the moon, Mars, or wherever you'd like without spending tons of resources. And he claims that he and his team have finally cracked the code. That they've built a machine that can lift itself in the air without any propellant. You got it right. The team claims to have violated Newton's third law, the basic rule of our world that every action needs an equal and opposite reaction. For example, in rockets, you throw fuel out the back, that's action. Being pushed by it, the rocket goes forward. That's the reaction. A magical device like that would also violate the conservation of momentum. When you push on something, you gain momentum, but something else has to gain equal momentum in the opposite direction to balance the books. But this device would change the total momentum of the system out of nowhere. If you're getting motion without pushing against anything, how in the world did you do that? It's like a balloon that can somehow move forward without blowing out any air. If the machine actually works, there must be some new, unknown force of nature that we've somehow missed in hundreds of years of physics. Bueller himself called it the new force. Let's try to figure it out. To create this magical device, they used electrostatics. Their test device was little, a 30-gram object about the size of a card deck, and it managed to create thrust or push using electric fields, a kind of invisible force made by electric charges. The new force starts working when two things happen in the system. The first one is electric imbalance. There's some electric pressure happening across parts of the device, kind of like air pressure. If it's not spread out evenly across it, for example, one side has more electric push than the other, that's the first ingredient. And that happens when the electric field, the invisible force that electric charges create, is set up just right. It has to spread out in a certain way. Not in straight lines, but uneven and fanning out, like sun rays or the spokes of a wheel. And boom, when it happens, the device pushes on itself and makes the whole object move. At first, the mysterious new force was tiny, barely noticeable, little to no thrust and noise. But with each upgrade, things started to shift. And in 2023, they finally measured enough thrust to overcome Earth's gravity. The weirdest part is that, according to Bueller, In some cases, the thrust keeps going even when the power is off, as long as there's still charge left in the materials. That's weird. That's really weird. That hints at something totally new in physics, something deeper than we currently understand. So now, any honest scientist starts sweating, because that sounds bananas, and frankly, it might be. Bueller admits this is still early work. The team published their discovery and got a patent. By the way, the company includes people who've worked at NASA, Blue Origin, and the US Air Force. They've been tinkering with this stuff for decades. Charles presented his findings at APEC, a conference for people who are passionate about alternative propulsion and crazy stuff like warp drives, anti-gravity, and ways to make Star Trek real. Now, they're actively working on that project. Of course, this stuff got very controversial, and lots of scientists are skeptical. There might be a mistake no one has caught yet, so they want to test the machine in space. If it works out there too, it could change space travel forever. It might be real, because it's not the first time we've discovered something like this. Recently, a startup called Evo Limited claimed that they'd built a quantum drive, another propulsion device that apparently didn't need fuel. They said they're tapping into a weird controversial theory of physics called quantized inertia. It was cooked up by a British physicist named Mike McCulloch. He basically said that inertia, the thing that makes objects resist acceleration, isn't a basic rule of nature, but an effect caused by some weird quantum radiation at the edge of the observable universe. In simple words, if QI is right, then under the right conditions, you might be able to generate thrust without throwing anything backward. You don't need fuel, just electricity and a clever enough setup. Many scientists don't buy into it, but who knows? Maybe that's why these new inventions could actually work. Anyway, initially, the IVO company was founded by a small team of tech guys who wanted to find wireless power. Their first big idea was called CBAT, capacitive-based aerial transmission. Basically, a fancy way to wirelessly send electricity through the air. But somewhere along the way, they pivoted. They started wondering, if we can move electricity through the air like this, can we move objects too? Can we rethink inertia itself? So, in 2021, they began working on a propulsion device based on this quantized inertia theory. They built the quantum drive around this idea. It was a self-contained electric system. No fuel tanks, no combustion, just a plug-and-play box that makes spacecraft move. They said it's light, stackable, and can be bolted onto a satellite like a toaster. And it weighs just a few hundred grams, way lighter than traditional thrusters. In 2023, they tested it, not in someone's garage, but in a legit vacuum chamber, simulating space conditions. The team said they ruled out every known force that might explain the results, and that it did generate thrust, not a lot, but consistent and measurable. Then came the big moment. IVO and a partner company, Rogue Space Systems, launched the quantum drive into space, and now they're waiting for the results of the tests. A lot of physicists think it's all nonsense. Some of them notice that this stuff is impossible because they'd be perpetual motion machines. Basically, if a device like this actually worked, you could use it to make infinite energy, which violates the first law of thermodynamics. But IVO says they're not doing that. They say QI works within our normal Newton's laws, just a bit differently. Anyway, all this stuff needs double-checking. Skepticism is so right because a lot of people get some unpleasant flashbacks. In 2001, a British engineer named Roger Scheuer introduced the M drive. It was this weird cone-shaped device that supposedly created thrust without pushing anything out the back. People were super excited. NASA even tested it with their EagleWorks team, and in 2016, they said they've detected tiny amounts of thrust from the M drive. The media absolutely blew up. People and scientists were hyped up, but later, bigger studies, including one from a German university that really went deep, found the sad result. It was just an experimental error. By 2021, the verdict was in. The M drive didn't work. It was all experimental noise, misunderstood data. another dream went down the drain. Many propellantless designs have crashed into one huge, stubborn wall: the laws of physics. So it's too early to say that these startups just change the world forever, but if it turns out to be real, it's not just a new engine, it's a new era. On November 2nd, 2000, the first crew of astronauts arrived at the International Space Station. Almost 25 years have passed, and the ISS still remains one of the most outstanding projects created by humanity. During all this time, 280 astronauts from 23 countries have visited the station. This place has become a floating laboratory for space research where people from all over the world come together to explore our universe. The station remains a source of inspiration for writers and movie directors. This is not only one of the most important parts of the scientific field of humankind, but also an important attribute of pop culture. The station makes one circle around Earth every 90 minutes, and very soon, one of its next circles will become the last one. NASA is going to destroy the ISS. Space and science fiction fans may feel sad at this moment, but there are good reasons for such a difficult decision. The ISS, like any physical object, is not eternal, especially in the conditions of outer space. Yes, there's no oxygen, atmosphere, oxidation of materials, and air pressure, but the ISS is moving at an altitude of about 260 miles above the Earth's surface at a speed of 17,900 miles per hour, which is almost 20 times faster than the speed of sound. Also, the space around the planet is filled with debris consisting of broken satellites. And don't forget about stardust and tiny pieces of meteorites. What if something crashes into the station and blows it to pieces? Yeah, NASA is tracking the largest pieces of debris, but there are more and more of them every year. Under such conditions, the station can't serve us forever. The parts are wearing out, and the station fasteners are becoming weaker and require frequent repairs. The station was supposed to only last 15 years, but it will eventually last twice as long. In 2030, astronauts will leave the ISS, and then it will be destroyed. But how can this be done, given the size of this object? It weighs 430 tons and is the size of a football field. It is the largest object after the Moon that flies around our planet. People made 42 launches into space to construct this gigantic structure. Given its size and close location to Earth, destroying the station is a big risk. Just imagine it disintegrating into hundreds and thousands of fragments and falling to the surface of our planet. Yes, some of these chunks will burn up in the atmosphere. Others will fall into the water. But some large parts can fall on cities. It will be a devastating meteor shower. This option is too dangerous, but this is exactly what NASA is about to do. The disposal of the station will probably be a more complex operation than its creation. Of course, scientists have considered other options besides the destruction. For example, we could return all the astronauts to Earth and then send the station to a higher orbit so that it would fly there forever. However, such an operation would be too expensive. In addition, changing the orbit might not save the station from collapsing. We definitely don't need a huge piece of metal that could fall apart at any moment over our heads. That's why destroying the station is the only option. To destroy the station, scientists plan to send it to a lower Earth orbit, then carry it through the atmosphere, where some parts of the station will burn, and after that, submerge the station in a remote part of the ocean, where ships don't sail and fish don't swim. By the way, this place is called Point Nemo, and it's located in the South Pacific Ocean. This is the farthest point from land. For many years, people have been dumping space debris and failed satellites there. It's considered one of the most lifeless and loneliest places on Earth. NASA plans to drop the ISS there, but this requires very precise calculations and control. The operation can't be fulfilled without a special space tug, and this unique machine will be invented by Elon Musk's SpaceX company. Musk signed an $845 million contract with NASA. According to it, the station should be safely destroyed by 2031. And that's how this cinematic operation is going to happen. The device that will lower the ISS to Earth will be built according to the design of the SpaceX Dragon ship capsule. Scientists plan to calculate the details of the station's flight trajectory, all angles of incidence, and the speed of movement. No mistake can be made, as any miscalculation will lead to disaster. Our planet is a giant object with a powerful gravitational force that attracts other objects to itself. The ISS uses thrusters to resist this attraction and stay at the same height. So, first of all, the station will need to reduce its resistance. If necessary, it can use the engines to adjust the route. From an altitude of 260 miles, the station will descend into an orbit of 205 miles above Earth. After that, SpaceX will launch its space tug. All this will happen about a year before the scheduled date of destruction. During this time, the astronauts will fold up scientific equipment, say goodbye to the station, and return home. This sad moment will be recorded on camera and posted on the internet. After that, the whole planet will watch the dramatic finale of the ISS. The space tug will dock with the station and transport it to the lowest point of the orbit, approximately 90 miles above the surface. There, the station will experience huge air resistance. It will become increasingly difficult to control the fall. The tug must be equipped with powerful rocket engines to correct the flight. Scientists will control the shuttle, calculating the trajectory of the fall. Then, SpaceX's device will begin to push the station down. The giant space object will pass through the thickest and most dangerous layers of the atmosphere. It will burn down the station, which will be falling apart by that time. This will be a mesmerizing fire show. Some parts will burn up in the air, others will pass through the barrier. At high speed, incandescent parts will collide with the surface of the Pacific Ocean. Millions of people will be watching the last flight of the space legend on the screens of their gadgets and TVs. The water will be getting closer, and boom! Pieces of those stations will crash into the water with a deafening noise. Many smaller fragments will fall nearby. The entire station will cool down quickly and sink to the ocean floor. Mission completed. But the history of the station won't be over. Point Nemo is 2,700 miles away from the nearest land in any direction. But the best way to get to it is from Easter Island, Chile. What if rich people from all over the world flew to Chile to then travel to Point Nemo? Just imagine, covering thousands of miles just to get to the ISS crash site. People will descend in bathyscaphs to the ocean floor and take out the wreckage of the station. Someone might start selling them. Someone will keep them at home as part of a collection. Perhaps NASA will retrieve some modules of the station to put them in a museum. But what will happen once scientists finally get rid of the ISS? The space laboratory is used for research in outer space. After its destruction, research will continue, but on a grander scale. Humanity has to explore Mars, remember? For such an important mission, it's necessary to prepare astronauts in conditions close to those on the Red Planet. The Moon is the perfect place. NASA is conducting the Artemis mission. We'll explore the lunar surface, and we will go on a long journey to Mars from there. At the end of 2022, NASA launched a probe that flew beyond the Moon. The next flight will be launched with people on board. The third flight will be the first human outing on the Moon since 1972. Gradually, step by step, the agency plans to land several astronauts and space station modules on the surface of the Moon. They will build large research bases where they will prepare for the first ever human flight to Mars. By the way, would you agree to go on a dangerous journey to the Red Planet? Write your answers in the comments.
For decades now, people have been dreaming of exploring space. And since the year 2000, there has indeed been a continuous presence of people in space. And recently, a new record has been set. Just a couple of weeks ago, there were 17 people from 5 different countries in Earth's orbit at the same time. The previous record was set in September 2021 during the privately funded Inspiration 4 mission. At that time, the number of people in orbit reached 14. So let's see. Just recently, 3 more people have arrived at China's Tiangong space station. There were 3 more astronauts aboard the same station, but they've been there since November 2022 and are supposed to return back to Earth in June. Then there are 7 people on board the International Space Station, and 4 more departed the ISS aboard SpaceX's Crew Dragon named Freedom. They successfully returned to Earth on the 30th of May 2023, leaving 13 people in orbit. Interestingly, the current record also includes the 600th person to get into Earth's orbit. Specialist Rueda from X-2 mission became a space traveler number 600, as well as the first Saudi woman in space. But I've got something even more exciting to tell you. Oh my! The record for most people in space, and just not in Earth's orbit, was reset not so long ago too. But it lasted for a mere 5 minutes or so. But during this short period of time, there were 20 people off the planet. This record was set when 6 members of the Virgin Galactic Unity 25 Spaceship Two crew happened to be in space at the same time as 3 Chinese taikonauts living and working aboard Tiangong and 11 astronauts on board the International Space Station. Now that's getting crowded. Well, the International Space Station has always hosted the majority of space travelers from Earth. But I bet there are some cool facts about this marvel of technological development you haven't heard yet. The ISS is the 3rd brightest object in the night sky, and the coolest thing? You can sign up for a special service and you'll get a text every time the ISS travels over your location and is visible with the unaided eye. I've seen it dozens of times myself, and it's very, very cool. Normally, you can see it between dusk and dawn, but be ready because the station is very fast. It moves at a speed of 5 miles per second and circles our planet every 90 minutes. The International Space Station is a true record breaker. It's the largest human-made object in space. It's 357 feet long from end to end, which is about the same length as a soccer field. It also weighs about 450 tons. 8 spacecraft can dock at the ISS at the same time. The working and living space of the station is bigger than a 6-bedroom house. Astronauts have 6 sleeping quarters, a gym, 2 bathrooms, and a beautiful 360-degree view from their special bay window. Now to the nitty-gritty. On the ISS, you wouldn't have to deal with lots of disgusting smells. There is a specially trained person who smells everything astronauts take with them in space. It's done to protect them from unpleasant odors. The thing is that you can't really air the room out there if you don't like how it smells inside. That's why NASA is very careful about what kinds of smells are allowed to pass through. You'd also have to get rid of your clothes instead of washing them after each use. To bring a mere 1 pound of load to the International Space Station costs up to $10,000. That's why it's easier to throw your clothes away when they get dirty than to waste water washing them. Now, while sleeping, you'd have exceptionally good airflow around you. Otherwise, the carbon dioxide you'd exhale would form a bubble around your head and you get oxygen deprived, and that's not good. Now, people often think that in space you experience zero gravity, hence the weightlessness astronauts feel on the International Space Station. But that's not exactly true. Gravity is one of the most important forces that exist in the universe. Thanks to it, the Moon can orbit Earth and the Sun doesn't float away from our home Milky Way galaxy. But astronauts on the ISS experience not full-fledged but microgravity, which means itsy-bitsy gravity. Earth's gravity on the space station is not only around 10 to 12% weaker than the gravity on the planet's surface, but astronauts are constantly in free fall. The spacecraft, the people inside, and all the objects aboard keep falling forward, not down, but around our planet, following a specific orbit. And since they're all falling together, the crew and the stuff inside seem to be floating. But our space exploration plans are much more ambitious than just orbiting our planet on board the ISS. We're planning to send a mission to the Moon and build a colony on Mars. Some experts claim that in the next 25 years, around 20,000 people are likely to leave Earth. But how many people would it take to colonize an entire star system? In 2002, anthropologist John Moore from the University of Florida stated that a spaceship with 150 passengers could leave Earth and set off on a several thousand years journey to another star system, and upon arrival, the descendants of the original crew could build settlements in a new world. That seems like a lot of work to me. Let's continue. The nearest star system, Proxima Centauri, is 4.2 light-years away from our home planet. Talking about space, it's just next door. But for us, it's so far that we would need to build a generational spaceship to get us there. But the question is how many people you'd need to send on such a mission to have enough genetic diversity. A new study disagrees with John Moore, claiming it must be way more than 150 people. According to a scientist from Portland State University, a spaceship traveling to such a distant world would have to carry at least 10,000 people. This number might secure the success of the mission. 40,000 people would be even better. Who knows what could happen to the travelers during such a challenging and unprecedented journey? At the moment, NASA isn't ready to send humans even to Mars, let alone a distant solar system. But a few private organizations are working on this project. They hope to make interstellar trips possible in the next century. They count on a huge increase in propulsion speed, which could potentially reduce the travel time between stars to a mere few hundred years. Researchers have built several simulations to figure out how many various scenarios could play out during such an interstellar mission, and they have come to the conclusion that the success of this mission would greatly depend on the size of the starting population. Genetic diversity would keep the travelers healthy. The larger the population is, the more diversity it has. And 150 people is definitely not enough to maintain genetic variations. Even a population of 500 people wouldn't be sufficient enough. At the same time, if we sent to another solar system 40,000 people, we'd be able to maintain 100% of the variation. Even 10,000 travelers would make the scenario relatively stable, which means that any number between 10 and 40,000 people would be a pretty safe bet. But of course, we wouldn't be able to send so many people in space in just one spaceship. We'd have to build many and spread people among them. These ships could be modular, able to dock together for trade and some social gatherings, for the genetic variety, I'm guessing. But they would travel separately, so that if some disaster struck one of them, the rest would remain unharmed. But to make interstellar travel possible, researchers and engineers will have to overcome loads of obstacles. We still need to increase propulsion speed, deal with the negative health effects of living in space, and invent self-sustaining systems providing air, water, and food. Or we could just decide to fix our own planet and stay home.
Professional storage hunting is really quite a gig these days. It's drawn a lot of attention from people all around the world too, since there are many TV shows focused on it. But it's not just storage hunters that can hit the jackpot with their findings. One couple from Arizona simply wanted a couch, but they weren't willing to buy a new one or pay a lot of money for it, so they participated in an auction where they made a $10 offer for an old couch. Since that piece of furniture wasn't in the best shape, they ended up purchasing the couch and the container it came in. When going through the storage unit, they had the best surprise. They found an old teddy bear filled with cash. That little toy ended up bringing them about $300,000. In 2011, another man came across an interesting discovery of his own after he examined the contents of a storage locker in San Fernando Valley. What he stumbled upon was a special comic book called Action Comics Number 1. The man didn't really know how valuable his finding was until he took it to an expert for further evaluation. Turned out, the comic book was actually the first one featuring Superman. But as much as he wanted to profit from it, the man had to give it back to the previous owner. The story goes that the comic book was stolen from a famous actor, who was himself really passionate about comics and Superman in particular. The actor had reported the book as missing to his insurance company and authorities, but it couldn't be found. The comic book, estimated to be worth somewhere around $1 million, reunited with its rightful owner 11 years after it had been stolen. Another incredible vintage object was found in a storage unit in Melbourne, Australia. It was a 1927 Harley-Davidson 8-valve racer with a sidecar. Based on experts' opinion, this fascinating vehicle had been sitting there for over half a century before resurfacing in 2015. It went for sale pretty soon afterwards and was purchased for a whopping $470,000. Some auctions for abandoned storage units are fun just because you have no idea what you're going to find in there. And that's regardless of how much profit you'll end up making. It's the story of a couple from Long Island that spent only $100 on the best thing they'd ever purchased. Hidden inside their mystery unit was a custom 1976 Lotus Esprit Sport. Not only was this car special because of its design, but it was also the car that was used in the 1977 James Bond movie, The Spy Who Loved Me. At first, the couple had no idea the car was a famous one, so they just looked at how they could fix it so they could continue using it. I mean, it did look pretty cool. After they took it to a repair shop, they found out that there was something special about the vehicle. Soon enough, they discovered where it came from and ended up selling it at an auction in 2013. The price? A mind-boggling $997,000. Another person from Southern California found something incredible in an abandoned storage unit back in 2017. His locker ended up filled with vintage videos, game hardware, and game cartridges. After he took them for evaluation, he found out that his findings were worth over $50,000. In 2010, another person paid just $275 for a large storage unit that seemed to be filled with simple salon supplies. But after looking closely, the person discovered a hidden object that ended up being worth a lot. A 1928 Marshall & Wendell Salesman piano. After further evaluation, the price of the musical instrument was estimated somewhere between $10,000 and $12,000. Space technology and a forgotten storage unit? This unit was auctioned off in Florida. After inspecting it, the owner realized it contained a NASA rocket and a countdown clock. Apparently, those were put into storage after the program they were supposed to be used in had been discontinued. The finding became so famous that it even made it on TV. Fans of famous singers may get some surprises in abandoned storage units too. Here's a story about a unit containing Aretha Franklin's personal belongings. Most of her things were transported there after an incident at her house. She ended up abandoning those items. Later, she admitted she had forgotten about them. At the auction, things like bags, articles of clothing, and even receipts in her name were presented to the public. Similarly, tucked away in a locker that used to be the property of Michael Jackson's dad, there were over 250 undiscovered and unreleased recordings. During the time the King of Pop wrote and produced those songs, he was between contracts. So, technically, there was no legal ownership of the songs. More so, the locker contained a huge number of photos of the famous singer and personal objects belonging to the Jackson family. Some of these items were auctioned off, while some others were acquired back by the family at great expense. It goes to show that missing a payment on your storage unit can be detrimental to everyone, regardless of how famous you are. Not every item found in storage units is inanimate. As weird as that may sound, one story has it that a man kept stumbling upon a cat while regularly visiting his storage unit. He couldn't really figure out how she got in there and why she kept coming back to visit, so he decided to take her home. Never thought you'd find a furry new friend in a storage unit, right? Other storage locker stories are less fortunate, like this one that happened in 2011, when a man thought he would hit the jackpot pretty easily if he could steal some valuables from an abandoned locker. But as he was filling his bags with the stuff he'd managed to get his hands on, a security guard saw that the door to the particular locker was open. Since he didn't hear any noise coming from inside, the guard decided to simply close the door. He thought that the owner had mistakenly left it open. Needless to say, the thief got stuck inside and was eventually caught and handed over to the police after he tried to escape. Keeping items in storage units may seem like a great idea when you need some space in your house but don't want to get rid of them just yet. However, you do need to know that there are a couple of rules you need to follow, because not every item is safe or legal to keep in storage. Take vehicles, for instance. In the US, most storage room suppliers only accept them if they're fully registered, insured, and in operable condition. And this doesn't just apply to cars. I'm also talking about trailers, boats, and even trucks. So you need to be prepared to offer all sorts of supporting documentation before you can move such an item into a storage facility. For obvious reasons, perishable items are a no-go. It includes food that needs to be refrigerated, food that is not kept in airtight containers, and even dry pet food in some cases. Most companies that offer storage space stay away from such items because they can attract bugs and rodents, or might encourage bacteria and mold to develop inside. You might think canned food is a no-go, but in most places, it's not allowed either. That's because the standard storage unit does not have a specific way in which you can control the temperature inside, and some food cans can burst in high heat environments. Plants aren't allowed in storage containers either. Not only do they need sunlight to thrive, but they can be a source of bugs and pests too. More so, some plants can cause weird smells if not treated properly. So it's best if you plant them outside or give them away if you can't fit them inside your house anymore.